Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to another Marvel vs. DC Tales episode. And in today's episode, we're going to be diving deep into the highly requested and highly anticipated Joker and Green Goblin team-up. This episode is going to be very interesting. It's going to have Green Goblin, Batman, Spider-Man, and the Joker. And it's going to be very interesting. This is something that I wanted to do for a very long time, and considering the fact that Joker and the Green Goblin are two of my favorite villains of all time, I had to do this Marvel vs. DC Tales episode. I know that I'm getting a ton of requests for a ton of different episodes, such as Mysterio and Scarecrow teaming up, so that's something that I will be doing very soon. But that being said, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, let's dive into the brand new fan fiction. The storm rolled across the sky with silent menace, its thick clouds blotting out the stars above New York City. Oscorp Tower stood like a jagged spear in the heart of the skyline, its needle point scraping into the heavens. Inside, the lights of the executive suite were dim, flickering faintly as a single figure sat in silence, hunched over screens that pulsed with alien patterns and multi-dimensional code. Norman Osborn hadn't slept in days. What began as a corrupted energy surge on a remote satellite feed had evolved into something far stranger. Oscorp's private systems had picked up an anomaly, a flicker of existence from outside their universe. Most scientists would have written it off as static, a data glitch. But Norman had seen patterns, had heard laughter echoing through encrypted channels, too rhythmic, too conscious to be coincidence. The voice came more clearly with each passing night, like a nightmare taking shape. It spoke in riddles at first, playfully, then directly, taunting, laughing, teasing him about secrets he didn't know he had. Norman had spent decades building power through science, manipulation, and brutality, but this voice felt different. It was familiar in its madness, like hearing a darker version of himself. Eventually, the obsession became unbearable. He activated the gate, the Oscorp multiversal aperture prototype. Barely functional, cobbled together from theory and hubris, roared to life. Energy crackled through containment fields as reality warped inside the chamber. Alarms screamed, fail-safes disengaged, and through the vortex something clawed its way through. It stumbled forward like a demon pulled from myth, lean, pale, clothes scorched, face twisted into a painted grin that refused to fade. Joker stepped into the Marvel universe like a man stepping onto a stage he already owned. His first breath was laughter. Norman watched from behind the safety glass, unsure if he'd made a discovery or invited in an extinction-level event. 3 days later. The city didn't notice the difference at first. Crimes still happened. The police still failed to keep up. Spider-Man still swung across the skyline like a stitched shadow between glass and light. But something was wrong. Peter Parker had been tracking a string of violent crimes for 2 nights. Warehouse raids, chemical thefts, bodies left painted with mock smiles. There was no clear motive, no ransom demands, no calling card he recognized from his usual gallery of rogues. And the brutality, this wasn't like Norman. It wasn't even like Craven. This was personal. He found a half-burnt playing card in an alley behind one of the crime scenes. A Joker. The corners were slick with blood. At first, Peter thought it was a joke, until he saw the pattern, until the crime scene started resembling art installations of horror. Victims weren't just murdered, they were arranged, smiling, always smiling. On the 3rd night, as the rain poured harder, Peter noticed something unusual across the rooftops. A figure darker than the sky itself watched him from the edge of a nearby building, unmoving, cloaked, tall, with eyes that glowed faintly like dying embers. The two stood in silence, the wind screaming between them. And Batman had arrived. Batman didn't need to explain why he was there. His trail had led him across worlds, through a breach in Gotham caused by a failed Lazarus Pit experiment tied to stolen Oscorp tech. Ra's al Ghul was dead. His men were slaughtered, and the man responsible had vanished into the breach, leaving only laughter and blood behind. Joker had crossed over, and now Batman was hunting him through a world where nobody understood what they were up against. Spider-Man kept pace with the Dark Knight through the city's underbelly as the two followed the web of clues. Broken labs, manipulated security footage, and a chilling silence from Oscorp's private network. Norman Osborn was hiding something. That much was clear. What they didn't know was that it had already begun. Somewhere beneath the city, in a warehouse reeking of iron, damp concrete, and gasoline, Harry Osborn hung in chains. His arms were raw where the restraints tore his skin. His face was swollen, bloodied, from days of psychological torment and beatings delivered with theatrical flair. He had no idea where he was, only that the lights never turned off, and the laughter never stopped. Joker had been toying with him. He whispered things in the dark, secrets about his father, about Spider-Man, about the value of pain. Harry screamed himself hoarse. No one came. Only cameras stared back, feeding Harry's image to Oscorp servers and to Norman himself. Norman watched in silence. He hadn't known at first, hadn't realized Joker had taken Harry during one of the early experiments. By the time he found out, it was too late. Joker was already inside his world, inside his company, inside his head. And now he was taunting him, pushing him further, calling him weak, calling him soft, telling him Harry's suffering was necessary. Norman's hands trembled as he closed the feed. The Goblin's voice whispered again from the depths of his mind, darker than ever. This wasn't just about chaos anymore. This was about control, about power, and pain. He opened the vault. Green armor gleamed under fluorescent lights, untouched for months. The glider was prepped. The formula was ready. The man who tried to stay dormant no longer existed. The Goblin was reborn. That night, Batman and Spider-Man interrogated a man connected to the thefts, one of Fisk's former chemical suppliers, now desperate and half-crazed. He spoke in broken phrases, half believing what he had seen. He described a monster in green and a clown in purple, together in the shadows building something big. Before he could speak further, something clinked against the pavement. A pumpkin bomb. The explosion shattered the alley in a plume of smoke and flame. Spider-Man and Batman dove through the blast, escaping just in time to catch a glimpse of a glider cutting through the haze above them. It hovered in the rain, engines humming. Perched on top, the Green Goblin, his laughter sharp and guttural. Behind him, gripping his shoulder and laughing louder, was Joker, a blood-red grin stretching across his face. The two vanished into the skyline, and the chase began. A city on edge, a trap already sprung, heroes racing against a clock that was ticking before they ever knew it existed. The city didn't sleep. Not anymore. New York was used to chaos, alien invasions, demonic possessions, the occasional mutant brawl downtown. But this was different. Something unspoken twisted in the air, as if the city itself sensed a reckoning creeping in. Explosions echoed from the warehouse district. Black smoke curled into the night sky. In the span of 48 hours, 6 Oscorp research labs had been destroyed. 8 chemists dead. 4 missing. Witnesses spoke of a creature in armor and a laughing maniac with a painted face, dropping from the sky like a circus from hell. Every incident was designed for spectacle. Camera angles perfect, body positioning choreographed. Someone wasn't just committing acts of violence, they were performing them. And the audience? Spider-Man and Batman. The duo had spent every waking hour chasing ghosts. Batman analyzed chemical traces left behind at the crime scenes, highly unstable neurotoxins, engineered fear agents, performance enhancers tied to a modified goblin formula. All of it was building to something. Meanwhile, Spider-Man dug deeper into Oscorp's closed networks. Norman was missing, his security teams were silent, and Harry's phone had been inactive for days. That was what kept Peter up at night. Not the murders, not the bombs. Harry. He had tried calling, messaging, asking friends if they'd seen him. But something told him the silence wasn't just coincidence. Norman's absence, the rising tension, the way the Joker seemed to be pushing him towards somewhere specific. It was a puzzle, but the pieces were shaped like bodies, and time was running out. Elsewhere, in Oscorp Tower, Norman Osborn stood in his private sub-level lab, his armor now fully active. His skin buzzed with the aftershocks of the formula, surging through his veins. Sharper reflexes, heightened aggression, accelerated healing, but also voices, not the goblin voice, a new one, Joker's. Their alliance had become something worse than toxic. It was infectious. Joker didn't just plan chaos, he planted it, let it grow like mold on the walls of Norman's psyche. He whispered ideas at dinner, laughed through security briefings, painted smiling faces on Norman's lab rats. But Norman tolerated it, because Joker held the key to something deeper, a final destruction of his enemies. Not through brute force, but through emotional evisceration, through grief. Tonight, Joker said it would all come together. He called it the laugh heard round the world. In a rusted, forgotten warehouse in the Bronx, Harry Osborn lay chained to a rusted chair. His breathing was shallow, his body broken. Joker had kept him alive, but barely. Cameras circled the room, every movement recorded, every scream archived. On the wall opposite Harry's body, written in what could only be blood, were the words, "Why didn't you save me, Dad?" Joker watched from a side room, chewing on a candy cigarette, grinning. He adjusted one of the camera angles, angling it perfectly to frame Harry's bruised, bloodied face. The boy was delirious now, half conscious, still muttering his father's name. Joker whispered to himself, admiring the moment like a painter at his canvas. This was his masterpiece. He hadn't just captured Harry, he had crafted him, turned him into a mirror, one that would shatter the moment Spider-Man found him. The punchline had already been written. That same night, Batman stood over a console in an abandoned Stark Tech facility, fingers gliding across screens as he decrypted Oscorp's server cache. Suddenly, a live feed opened. His heart stopped. Harry, chained, bleeding, hooked up to medical equipment in what appeared to be a warehouse on the edge of the city's industrial sector. Batman immediately alerted Spider-Man, and together they launched toward the location. The heroes arrived 5 minutes too late. That's all it took. Joker had built a kill box. The warehouse was wired from the ground up. Pressure triggers, fail-safe explosives, remote gas canisters rigged with toxins that even Bruce couldn't identify. Joker's laugh echoed through pre-recorded speakers as they landed on the rooftop. They breached through the skylight, crashing down into the center of the room. And for a moment, just a moment, Peter saw Harry, still alive, barely. The boy looked up, their eyes met, but Joker had planned this perfectly. The motion sensors tripped, a soft beep began in the wall. 10 seconds. Spider-Man launched forward with everything he had, webbing, speed, even a desperate shout. Batman threw batarangs at the detonators, disabling 2. but not the third. The explosion swallowed the far side of the warehouse in a fireball of shrapnel and flame. Peter didn't hesitate. He dove into the blaze. Through burning beams and choking smoke, he found Harry's body, crumpled near a pillar, still breathing. Then not. The pulse faded under Peter's fingers. And just like that, Harry Osborn was gone. Spider-Man collapsed to his knees, cradling the body, shaking, stammering. Heat scorched his costume. Ash filled his lungs, but he didn't feel it. Batman stood behind him, silent. He didn't need to say anything. He had lived this scene before. Jason Todd, another boy. Another loss. Another villain who found joy in breaking heroes by turning their loved ones into corpses. Spider-Man's hands trembled. He screamed into the fire. The sound cracked his voice and echoed through the rubble. And above it all, high atop a nearby rooftop, Norman Osborn watched from his glider. He had arrived late. Joker had insisted he stay behind, claiming artistic privacy. Now, as the flames roared beneath him and sirens blared in the distance, Norman saw what had been taken from him. His son, his last anchor. Harry's name whispered from his lips, but it was swallowed by the wind. Then the goblin screamed. It wasn't rage, it wasn't grief, it was something more ancient, more primal. He turned the glider. His eyes glowing behind his mask, locked onto the figure dancing in the distance. Joker. Watching from another rooftop, applauding the carnage like it was theater. And then Norman knew. Joker had never needed him. He had used him. The partnership was over. Green Goblin goes rogue, launching an assault on Joker that nearly destroys half the city. Joker escapes, of course, and releases a final chemical agent to poison New York. Batman and Spider-Man are forced to stop both villains before more lives are lost. And in the aftermath, the cost of this alliance is paid in full. The smoke still clung to the skyline like the breath of something ancient and cruel. Emergency crews clawed through the remains of the warehouse ruins, sirens weeping across the riverfront. But it was already too late. Harry Osborn was dead. His body had been claimed by fire, cradled in the arms of a broken Spider-Man, until paramedics peeled them apart. Cameras hidden in the alley by Joker himself caught every frame. Peter Parker's grief frozen in time, like a grotesque mirror of Batman's loss all those years ago in a filthy warehouse back in Gotham. The world would see this. Joker would make sure of it. Across the city, Green Goblin struck first. He didn't return to Oscorp. He didn't retreat into silence or shadows. No, Norman Osborn soared into the night like a demon in emerald armor, fury trailing behind him like a storm. His glider screamed through the air, leaving shockwaves over Midtown. Pumpkin bombs rained down on rooftops and corporate buildings tied to Oscorp's stockholders. He wasn't striking enemies, he was burning bridges, blowing apart everything he'd ever built. And it wasn't enough. He wanted Joker's blood. Joker had already moved. Slipping through the chaos like a ghost, he relocated to the old subway tunnels beneath Grand Central, a perfect little theater for his final act. The place had been rigged for weeks. Cameras, screens, gas lines, a stolen Oscorp dispersal device repurposed into a city-scale chemical bomb. His toxin, still incomplete, was unstable, but it would do the trick. Not death, laughter, madness, chaos. A symphony of screaming smiles. He called it the last laugh. But what Joker didn't expect was Norman's response. The Goblin found the tunnel entrance in less than an hour. The fight that followed wasn't strategy. It wasn't showmanship. It was primal, bloody, and volcanic. Joker laughed through it all, even when Goblin shattered his ribs with a glider strike, even when he was slammed through the rusted bones of the station. Even when Norman snapped his collarbone with his bare hands, Joker kept laughing. Because it wasn't about winning, it was about breaking the system. Breaking them. Batman and Spider-Man arrived seconds later. They dropped into the carnage to find Joker nearly unconscious, bleeding out on a pile of shattered monitors, and Green Goblin hammering him into the concrete with one gloved hand. Peter moved fast, webs snapping, glider systems frying. Batman followed with explosive gel, disabling the dispersal device before the Joker toxin could be triggered. But Norman didn't stop. Spider-Man had to drag him away physically, webbing his arms and slamming him into the wall. Norman's mask cracked, half his face exposed, eyes wild with pain. He snarled something barely coherent, something about Harry, about betrayal, about it all being a joke, and Joker, lying in blood, and ruin coughed out his response. "You finally get it," he whispered. "The punchline's always been pain." They both could have died that night, but they didn't. S.H.I.E.L.D. arrived just in time, flying in with containment units and medical teams. Joker was cuffed, half delirious, half giggling, carted away under maximum lockdown. He whispered something to one of the agents as they loaded him into the van. The agent never repeated it, and Norman, he was sedated, bound and muzzled, muttering Harry's name under his breath like a prayer to a god that had already turned away. Dawn broke, and for once there was no relief. The city survived, barely, but Peter Parker didn't feel like he did. He stood on the edge of the ruined warehouse site with Batman beside him. The two said nothing for a long time. Only when the wind began to pick up again did Batman speak. He didn't offer comfort, just truth. "He wanted to make you feel what I did, and he did. But what you do with it next, that's where you win." Peter nodded, not because he agreed, but because he had no idea what else to do. Then Batman turned and walked away, disappearing into the morning fog, and Spider-Man stayed, watching the sun rise over a city that would never understand what it almost lost. Beneath a ruined Oscorp lab, one left off every grid, known only to Norman's most restricted files, a pressure door hissed open. Inside, the shadows pulsed red. A black tank cracked from Joker's earlier tampering lay open. Red tendrils slithered across the walls like veins. The creature inside had already found a new host. Blood on the floor. Footsteps echoing. A shape moves across the wall, lanky, chaotic, muttering. The laugh comes first, faint, giddy. Then the voice. Now this. This is going to be carnage. The rain had returned. Not the violent, vengeful downpour of nights past, but something softer, somber. The kind that dripped slowly from every rooftop, every tombstone, like the sky itself was mourning. Rows of black umbrellas dot the landscape. Silence hangs like fog. A funeral, intimate, private. At the head of it all, Peter Parker stands in the rain, eyes fixed on the casket being lowered into the earth. Harry Osborn, gone. No fanfare, no press. Just a shattered friend and a father who wasn't allowed to attend. Norman Osborn remained locked away in a high-security S.H.I.E.L.D. facility, deemed unstable and unfit to appear. Not that anyone would have welcomed him. Not after everything. Peter doesn't speak. He just watches. Hands buried deep in the pockets of a soaked black coat. Head bowed, his mask stuffed away. A few feet behind him, Batman stands under the shadows of an old elm, blending in with the grayness. He's already said what he needed to say. Now he just watches too. Quiet, still, guarded. The ceremony ends. People begin to drift away, but Peter stays. Until finally, Bruce steps forward, stopping beside him. "He wouldn't want you to carry it alone." Peter barely nods. His voice is low, hollow. "He didn't deserve that." Bruce looks toward the grave. No one ever does. Later that night, the Bat and the Spider sit in a dim, empty safe house on the edge of Queens. A portable monitor hums in the corner of the room, hooked into global security feeds and emergency broadcasts. Peter sits at a table, mask on this time, just still, watching the rain slide down the window. The silence between them isn't awkward, it's understood. Then static crackles on the monitor. The screen flickers, and then a broadcast breaks through. Panic, screams, sirens, a live feed from somewhere in Canada, a small town, darkness engulfed in chaos, people running, fires, burning, and then a figure appears. Flickering through the static, a shape walks through the carnage. Humanoid but warped, covered in dripping red and black tendrils, his face split into a grin too wide for any human mouth. Joker. But not the Joker they knew. This one was bigger, stronger. His body pulsated like a living weapon. The carnage symbiote fused to his skin like armor made of screams. His eyes gleamed like wet razors, his grin twisted, and in his hand, a head. A police officer, still twitching. He threw it at the news camera and laughed. The signal cut to static. Peter stood slowly, frozen. Batman was already moving. Meanwhile, deep within S.H.I.E.L.D. containment, Norman Osborn sat in his glass cell, still, paler than usual, unshaven, sleepless. His eyes glued to the small wall monitor as the emergency broadcast replayed, half corrupted, and then he saw him. Joker, covered in carnage, laughing, free. The image burned into Norman's retinas. His mouth opened slightly. A whisper escaped, cracked and hollow. My God, what have I done? The screen flickered again, glitching, and then, just for a split second, Joker turned and looked directly into the camera, as if he knew Norman was watching. The smile never left his face. And that is going to be it for today's Marvel vs. DC Tales episode. How did you guys enjoy the storyline, and is there going to be a part 2? Well, of course there's going to be a part 2, especially with Joker and the Carnage symbiote. This is something that I wanted to do for a very long time, and seeing that, you know, we have an opportunity here to make the storyline even greater than it was. So I think a part 2 is definitely needed. You're gonna see a lot more Marvel vs. DC Tales episodes, such as what if Deadpool killed the DC universe? That will be coming soon, as well as an episode between symbiote Spider-Man and the Batman. So that's something that you guys can expect, as well as Superman vs. Hulk. So there's a lot more going with this particular series. I really do appreciate all of the support that you guys are giving me throughout the Marvel vs. DC Tales fan fictions, because this series really isn't about power rankings. This is more so just a series based on fan fictions and how these storylines could play out if they were to play out. But that being said, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, if you guys are new to the channel, I would highly recommend that you guys subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. And I would highly recommend that you guys join the YouTube community, as you guys can get exclusive, you know, behind the scenes content, and also be like the first ones to watch these videos. And also I would highly recommend checking out the different perks that I have on the Patreon, as that also goes a very long way into the production of these videos, as well as the animated what if fan fictions, and we got a ton of those coming soon in summer of 2025. So I actually just did a teaser on my Instagram, so you guys should check that out. But that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care and have a wonderful day. Peace out.